So what is leadership and governance? From a management perspective, the academic jargon offers a useful definition of leadership, which may be employed cross-culturally, defining that leadership as both a process and a property. The process of leadership is the use of non-coercive influence to direct and coordinate the activities of the members of an organized group toward the accomplishment of group objectives. As a property, leadership is the set of qualities or characteristics attributed to those who are perceived to successfully employ such influence. Now, when we look at governance, governance is the act of governing. It relates to decisions that define expectations, grant power, or verify performance. It consists of either a separate process or part of decision-making or leadership processes. In modern nation states, these processes and systems are typically administered by a government. So what is the linkage between leadership, governance, and human rights? The linkage is that you cannot have one without the other. They are all part and parcel of each other. Let's look at an example in your communities. And in the Pacific, leadership is typically framed within the context of two models. You have the big man leadership and chiefly leadership. But we'll focus on chiefly leadership, which resides in the position, not the person, and is inheritable. Although achievement also impacts upon the attainment of title. Chiefs possess authority over permanent groups and are being exercised in the hierarchical systems of Polynesia and Micronesia. Both forms of leadership are dominated by male adults, which still exist in the social and traditional hierarchical structures of Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. Now, if the leader of your village, community, is a chief, and that person continues to abuse power by taking your land when it feels like it, or force the people within your communities to give money, or even steals from families by organizing a group of young people to commit such crime, is this real leadership? Is this the type of leadership that you would want children to be exposed to? Leadership in modern governance is a whole new spectrum. Leaders in modern governance must exercise and endorse respect for the laws of the country and its system of government. Beyond this overarching principle, leaders need to be responsible for upholding and sustaining the rule of law through the separation of powers, enforcement of the decisions of courts, and enforcement of instructions and policies that are lawfully created, and thus promoting and protecting the rights of its citizens. Now, human rights require an open mind and open heart. We must be willing to learn new things and embrace people different to us. To have a harmonious society, it is important that the needs and aspirations of all members are accommodated. Otherwise, resentments can arise. Social harmony comes from balancing the needs of social unity belonging to a nation state, the needs of the different cultural groups within the nation state, and the needs of the individuals. To achieve this social harmony, it is very helpful if all members of the society can share a set of principles and beliefs. Human rights can provide a set of principles and beliefs which can be shared by all members of society. A set of shared principles and beliefs based on human rights, often called a human rights framework, provides a multicultural society with 1. Minimum agreed standards which should help stop abusive practices between cultural groups. 2. A mechanism for balancing the rights of one person against another. Example, balancing the right to freedom of speech against the need to stop speech that promotes racial hatred. 3, a method to solve multicultural disputes. And 4, a shared curriculum for promoting harmony. Now, going back to leadership, who has been a role model to you or a great leader that has inspired you?
I would say it's my dad. He always inspired me, motivating me to do what is right to do. He teaches me what are some of the things that needs to be done at home, teaching me what is very important, what are some of the virtues that you have to take into yourself when meeting up with your society, meeting with friends, and going into school. These are some of the things that my dad teach me. Mostly some of the values, some of the values, the virtues that I have to share and practice in the society.
My mother. Naturally, I think women have better leadership skills, so I would go for women, for my mom, because naturally I think mothers do more of the work. So I think they, from when we were babies till we grow up, they are always there to tell us what to do, what not to do. They teach us the morals and values of society and how to act towards others. So for me, that would be a good characteristic of a good leader.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Lekima and Tomasi. And I think, you've spoken from the heart in terms of, who you've seen as role models. And you've talked about, your mother and your father. And I think in terms of leadership, it's so important that, leadership it begins at home. It's the principles and values that you're grounded with and the things that you've been taught with as a child. So you've done very well in terms of alluding to, to the person that you've seen as a role model all your life. Now, I want to share with you a visionary leader whom I've respected and have seen as a true leader in my home country, which is Tonga, and that is Queen Charlotte III. She was the first reigning female monarch from 1918 until her death in 1965. These were the qualities that Queen Charlotte was known for. She was a visionary. She was one of the first leaders who lobbied on women's issues in Parliament during her time and believed in the sustainable management of the country's resources and the importance of upholding and respecting the dignity of all people. She was known for her qualities to be a good listener. And I think this is important, that as you start looking into qualities of a good leader, that you start looking into these characteristics. A good leader doesn't think he or she knows everything or always knows better than the other people. She was also inclusive in her decisions. A good leader not only listens, but listens to lots of different people and takes their advice and their views into account when making decisions. Queen Charlotte would also delegate work. She was known for that. And this brings back the importance of a good leader, recognizing the importance of giving up control in certain areas because other people know more about that area or bear primary responsibility for it. Inclusiveness and delegation together are the essence of shared governance. She was also known to be sincere. A good leader doesn't just pretend to listen or pretend to delegate. He or she doesn't merely pay lip service to the concept of shared governance or attempt to manipulate the process for personal gain. So these are just some of the qualities that I was sort of taught as a young person that was also shared growing with me as I grew up in terms of her leadership. Now, I think it's important that as students, you should start to unpack the qualities of leadership that you look for in people, and that you make your own assessment that a leader also recognizes human rights principles. I want to finish with this last slide, and it's a quote that I took from the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat website, so you can go to that website. But it's stated in it's in a publication on the foreign principles of good leadership, and I'll just read it out. And it says, "Leaders have captured their respect for cultural values, customs, and traditions by embodying these in their constitutions to ensure their protection and preservation. In modern governance, the role of traditional leadership and institutions have been drawn upon to support the exercise of power through national policy and decision-making. The challenge for leaders is to balance these cultural values, customs, and traditions with a respect for human rights, religious freedom, and democratic principles." So to conclude, leadership is about balancing all those factors and tailoring human rights principles to the context of your respective community. Thank you, Lakima, for your question, and a very important question. I think if you also refer to your course material, one of your activities is activity 7.2, and it looks at good governance principles. And so I think it's a great table where you as students would actually make your own assessment in terms of how you see leaders in your own country, and then you sort of assess them in terms of good governance principles such as accountability, transparency, responsiveness, participation. I didn't touch that because of time, but as students, because this is a time where you're allowed to think. I mean, of course you're allowed to think, but it's a time where you can question a lot of things, and you do a lot of reading. So it's about going out there and sort of making your own assessment. I can't really comment on, a country that does practice bad leadership, but the political dynamics of each country is different. And I think as a young person and as a student, it's important that you sort of weigh them. The clip that you saw in terms of, those ants that were all walking together as one, and then you had that true leader trying to direct them, and then all of a sudden this animal appeared. So that sort of signified the structures within the government. And so when you're looking at good leadership, you look at the things that also align to human rights principles. Does a good leader reflect that in terms of their leadership qualities? Respecting others, being inclusive in their approach, and including all other groups, such as people with disability. And when you look at bad leadership, it's weighing that and looking at the contrast, because all of us, we all have our own role models that we try to aspire to, and it's about looking at the good qualities that person has. So your question is also a tricky question, and it is also a political question. But it's important that you also go back to your course material, especially that activity that I had mentioned, where you're it's almost doing like a temperature measurement in terms of the politics within your own country, and weighing it out to those good governance principles. Thank you.